Yes, I'm Rene. I work with FoodWorks, and we're trying to build a more fair and sustainable food system in Sheffield. And that means we see, and I've always seen, environmental sustainability and social justice as being inextricably linked, really. So I'm really pleased how that's reflected in the discussions today. Um, I thought I'd start with some uncomfortable facts to I don't know, maybe not the best idea, but the top 10% of earners globally cause about 95% of our CO2 emissions. Um, so that is probably all of us here. We, by holding on to more than our fair share of wealth and using it to fuel our excessive consumption behaviors, are the problem. Our organic veg box and the recycled toilet paper are just a drop in the ocean, really, compared to the impact from how we travel and all the stuff and the services that we buy every day. Um, every time we click add to basket on Amazon, and God knows over the past year, I'm sure we have all done it many, many times, we are actually contributing to both poverty and to climate change. And that is a very simple truth that until we come to terms with it, actually very little substantial, I think, will change. Um, I don't think that's because we're inherently evil or anything like that. I don't want to turn this into some sort of Calvinistic diatribe. But these are sort of learned behaviors, perhaps, that stem from how we are taught to think about ourselves in the world. And so it also means I think we can change those behaviors if we perhaps reimagine who we are in this world. So we're taught to see ourselves as consumers, and it's sort of come up a bit with previous speakers, right? We're consumers, independent individuals, looking at the relation to the world as a set of transactions that we are trying to maximize for our personal benefit. And that's how we operate in the world, and that's how we expect everyone else to operate in the world. That's not necessarily the only way to look at ourselves. Before we were consumers, about a century ago, we were subjects. We were part of a hierarchy in which we were duty bound to play our role, predetermined for us by society. And we were liberated from that oppression of being a subject by becoming consumers. But it means we're also free to now reimagine our world and our role in it beyond consumerism if we feel it is the time to change paradigm. And I think it is. So lots of organizations have been trying to capture what that new paradigm might look like. And the closest useful label I've come across that I think is useful is citizenship. So the idea of being a citizen is about recognizing that we are all a part of an interdependent system and interdependent communities, and that all the actions that we take individually or collectively are continuously reshaping and building the world around us. And that then means we all have a responsibility to act with a purpose in a way that it creates the world that we want to live in. I think over the past year, actually, while in many ways it's been horrible, it's been really interesting and I think nice to see that the rise of mutual aid groups, which I think are exactly about that. And we've seen the power of this idea in how those groups have functioned, and that so many people have had incredible benefits and found it incredibly rewarding to be a part of that active community, although maybe not in the traditional materialistic sort of consumerist sense of the word, but rewarding nonetheless. Um, and so ultimately, I think that is really the essence of what FoodWorks is, or at least tries to be. So we're a community of volunteers and customers and other stakeholders who are trying to be part of and contribute to making a different world together. And then I don't think we all have to agree on exactly what that is, or or how we get there, or exactly what contributions are needed at a particular point in time. That is okay for that to all be different for all of us. I think actually the most important thing is that we learn to act from this sense of us all being interconnected. And from there, actually, a lot of good things will emerge. So So my view on how we want to maybe try and change the food system isn't necessarily um, dictated by any particular solution or technology or approach to sort of technically addressing this problem. Is really first and foremost about trying to engage people with being a citizen in our food system. Um, and actually, while that all sounds a bit maybe vague and ephemeral, it has been incredibly successful for us. So FoodWorks over the past year, despite all the challenges, has doubled in size. And actually, we have done it for most of our, almost every year in our 6 years of existence. Over the various lockdowns in the past year, we've provided more than 1 million meals worth of food to Sheffield. And the carbon emissions we prevented by doing a lot of that with surplus food are roughly equivalent to the CO2 sequestered by a forest of about 100 acres, or by, say, something like Graves Park. So that's quite massive. So all of that is delivered by a range of contribution that people make as part of our community, whether they might be a volunteer or a customer, or in some way a stakeholder in this idea. And that idea and the core of it doesn't require external funding and subsidies. That idea sustains itself. It's a viable idea. And there's a lot I could tell you about that, but I know we're running a bit short on time, so I thought there might be two practical things to maybe share that we're working on right now. In particular, also because we're still very much open to ideas, contributions, partners, etc., around both of these ideas. So hopefully it can be a bit of a seed as well for further work. So the first of that was briefly already mentioned by Fran, is we're trying to do a lot more around growing food. It's really hard to imagine any sustainable food future in Sheffield without us growing a lot of our food ourselves. It's more environmentally sustainable, it's more healthy, but actually equally important, I think it reconnects people with their food in a meaningful way. It's all about that interconnectedness. So we now have our own little growing plot, which has been made available by Green Estate on a manor. And what we're trying to do there is sort of pilot a growing season to understand the sort of the economics of growing food with the community, and to see if we can develop a replicable, sustainable model of, I guess, something like community-supported agriculture, but working on a basis of more flexible contributions and in-kind contributions. Because if we can make that work, we can roll out growing plots across the city to help communities everywhere in the city grow their own food, and sort of help maybe realize, the vision Jill was actually painting earlier. So we started just by trialing that ourselves for this year, but we're really interested to talk to more people who've got access to land or communities who are looking to grow, that we might work together with to try more of this out, because I think some of this is probably also a question of scale and what the right scale is for a growing project to be economically viable. It's looking quite challenging, but it's worth trying. The other thing that we're trying to do around growing food is also to actually try and tap a lot of the unused capacity for growing food in the city, or for using food that has already been grown. Like, obviously our roots are in redistributing surplus, and so we are looking to link in more now with local growers to also make sure that things that they have going spare aren't actually going to waste. And aside from commercial parties, actually last year we've also started to work with the Woodseats Allotment Society. Lots of allotmenteers are often producing a lot more than they actually use. And so they actually approached us to share some of their surpluses with us. And we're now rolling that out this year to try and set up partnerships with all allotmenteers and other amateur growers to see if we can not only maybe redistribute some of their surplus, but if we can work with them to also bring online some of the spare capacities in their often fairly generous plots that aren't always fully utilized, and see if we can get more of the land in Sheffield that is not used for growing but could easily be used for growing, get that online to get more healthy and fresh food into our city. So that's one of our projects for this year. I'd be really interested to talk to anyone who's interested in this growing food, in particular with local communities and local areas. So do get in touch. The other thing I wanted to maybe share is
Rene, sorry, we're running short of time.
Okay, I'll wrap up. So the other thing is really we're rolling out community hubs. So we've got 11 local partners now in the city. The idea really is to partner with local communities to, if we want to build food citizens and communities around food, that doesn't happen on a city scale level. So we need hyper local solutions and partnering with hyper local sort of organizations in communities to as seeds to build engagement around food. So again, we're really interested to talk to any community organizations that are interested to do something meaningful around food in their community, so we can get the entire city involved in discussions around food and being a part of the sustainable food system. I'll wrap up there then.